दसां दुख दर्द सैयों, मेरा रोग ताला इलाज दिसे, कर काट साईं कानू छूटे मैं थो, क्यों सवाल है बिना जवाब दिसे। The IPTA, the Indian People's Theatre Association, was an organization that was set up in the year 1943, in the last decade of colonial rule. It was an organization that for the first time in the history of this country consciously decided to use culture as a means of protest and to talk about common people's problems and to consciously articulate protest through culture. Very large number of artists got involved with the IPTA, people from theatre, people from dance, large number of musicians, very well known photographers, artists, almost anybody who was to the left of the nationalist movement or the progressive nationalist movement was part of the IPTA. Actually, this started off as a purely personal project, and it came out of my experience with singing one song, which I've been singing now for more than 25 years, Jaane Wale Sipahi Se Poocho, which Safdar Hashmi taught me way back in 1983. And I sang for a very long time with a group called Parcham, and Parcham, we still sing occasionally together. It's a protest song group, and we used to work with Safdar and Safdar Jannate Manch. And in 83, Safdar decided to bring this song into our repertoire. We developed it. The protest song was typically associated with fast-moving, marching tune type of songs where the message of protest would be immediately obvious. This was a song that seemed to break that stereotype, and it, apart from everything else, it had tremendous appeal. It's a song which would come up on demand every time we performed, and that's, over the years, it led me to wondering whether there are many more of these songs. If there was one song which survived somehow or the other, surely there must have been larger number of these. So that's actually really the provocation. And about 4 years ago, I just got in touch with some of the older people from the IPTA, Shobha Sen in Calcutta, and it was as if I had stumbled upon a Pandora's box, really. It was a huge, I found such a large number of songs that it astounded me. After that, then it actually acquired far larger dimensions. I realized that this was a movement whose music had not been analyzed at all, had not been collected, had not been documented, had not been thought of, which I thought was unfortunate. And whereas the theatre to some extent has been analysed, the plays have been talked about quite a bit, even in academic circles, whereas the music has not been talked about. So I also thought that this corpus actually needs to be looked at more seriously, not just in terms of being a lovely collection of songs, but also more seriously in terms of what role that music played at a particular point in history. I've been working in 5 languages, but then which are basically Hindi, Bangla, Malayalam, Punjabi and Telugu. But there is a lot of wonderful music from Assam, Marathi itself. In Maharashtra, the tradition was very vibrant, There's not much in Tamil. The IPTA didn't have a substantial presence in Tamil Nadu. It did in Chennai, but not in Tamil as a language. Not very much in Kannada. Kannada had a different kind of a tradition which came up later. Not much in Gujarati. But yes, all the other languages that I've talked about, there is a very substantial repertoire. I've had to reconstruct some of the tunes. For example, most of the people whom I interviewed were close to 80 or above 80. In many cases, they had lost their voices. In many cases, I found the lyrics from, say, old notebooks, which were tattered notebooks found under people's cots and things like that. So I went through a process of trying to reconstruct myself and then authenticating it through somebody else. So if once I would reconstruct it and then hum it to somebody, for example, they would say, oh no, it wasn't like this, it was like this. So so that process has happened. There has been a little change in some of the tunes, not in terms of the actual tune itself, but in terms of the interpretation. So while I've started singing some of them, I find that because of the kind of instruments that I've been using as part of the performances, the songs sound a little different, slightly different, but the tunes are, I've been absolutely faithful to the original tunes. There's a very wide range of ways in which protest and music have been connected with each other. That is, often you couldn't make out from the song that there's any protest involved over here. The symbolism would be very, very subtle. This is true, for example, in a large number of songs that came out of Kerala. They would be, you would be looking really for the obvious stereotypical symbols of protest. They would be love songs, they would be laments, they would be just pure descriptive songs talking about people's conditions. So therefore the stereotype of the protest song that I grew up with, for example, in Delhi, this whole idea of Krantikari Sangeet gets broken to a large extent because there's a whole range of ways in which that protest itself gets conveyed. For example, Salil Chowdhury used form itself as a way of conveying protest. The fact that he broke away from traditional Indian structures of songwriting and song making itself constituted protest. Now, I mean, there are a few songs which I've been singing as part of my repertoire, where often people would wonder where the protest is, where the resistance is, but then they also react to it aesthetically. So now in the 40s, many of these things were not even questions. It did not matter to people because people came in thousands and thousands to listen to a very simple love song being sung by a peasant girl, say, in Kerala. Okay, that was political. That was political without having to say that there is a flag waving and there is a, they come out and march. There were songs which were mobilization, which would be asking people to come out on, go on strike and things like that. That was a different category. So it didn't necessarily need to belong to these watertight compartments. There were other organizations in Kerala. There was a KPAC which was formed in Kerala. There was the Prajanatya Mandali in Andhra. There were so many other organizations which broadly fall under what I would call the IPTA tradition. They were actually raising very, very fundamental aesthetic questions. Not only fundamental aesthetic questions, but questions that came up in exploring the relationship between aesthetics and politics. I mean, recently I've found a lot of material which actually looks at some of the issues that came up in Greece in the 30s through the 50s, in fact. So all the complicated issues to do with how you define a national culture, how you define people's culture, what is the influence that the Soviet Communist Party and Soviet debates on aesthetics have on left-wing music debates in a place like Greece. The question of what is authentic people's music. Is it folk music as it is sung in the fields and in the countryside? If you change the words and use the same tunes, okay, like trade unions have often done that, and this was a huge debate in the UK from the late 19th century onwards and in the early 20th century, that what is the authentic folk? So if somebody actually uses those tunes and puts in a different set of lyrics, does that actually degrade it? Does it make it third-rate music, or does it actually make it more political? Some of these issues did come up in India. I've just finished recording an album of 9 songs in 4 languages. And this is from the repertoire that I have collected. The album is ready, and I've worked with Sushmit Sen of Indian Ocean. So he has produced it, and we're bringing it out together. But in the process, I mean, in the past 2 years, I've had the real good fortune of working with some wonderful musicians. Tapan Malik, who's played the cello in my performances, Deepak Castellino, who's well-known guitarist. We've all been performing together. So for all of us, I think this has been a new experience and very interesting one.
ऊंची नीची टेढ़ी मेढ़ी सड़कों पे लिए दौड़े जाते हैं राजा का डोला डोला हे अपने जिस्म के